Hello gamers! Well, I think I mentioned in one of my previous videos that we liked customizing the controllers we used most commonly back then. And I was a kid of the 90s, and that meant that we were separated pretty much by music in our little groups. My group was really into heavy metal, Nine Inch Nails, and Metallica, and Marilyn Manson. So, one of my friends customized this controller with nail polish. Now, I tried to use some nail polish remover, because, you know, I'm an idiot. And of course, immediately realized my mistake. Now, I was shooting a video at the time because I wanted to do a restoration on this controller. But since I damaged it, I didn't really want to make a video about me damaging a controller. So I put it to the side, decided I'll just bring it in later. It's like green from the acid stain. Now, I've never done a controller customization before, but this one is already damaged, so how bad could I do? I'd already done a complete restoration of the inside and internal components. Everything worked perfectly fine, but just to be sure, I needed to check the inside to make sure that the acid hadn't gotten through, maybe dripped onto the PCB. It took me a while to come up with this doohickey. Well, luckily it works like a charm, with minimal radiation damage. Afterwards I realized I was going to have to take it apart anyway, but hell, it was worth it to make the Deobfuscator. The damage could probably be repaired by some sort of plastic, epoxy or covering or repainting it, but I figured I like customizing my stuff, and this is a good opportunity to do it. So I watched a bunch of videos and started to make a mock-up of what I wanted to make. I used a basic paint program here, overlaid some circuits onto some gold background, put in the Triforce, touched up the Nintendo logo, and got to work.
Discover the wonder.
I left a link in the description to some good products for doing this if you want to do it yourself. I didn't have all of the best options, so I just worked with what I had. But you want to start off with some high grit sandpaper to make sure that you get off anything that on the top coat, any kind of coating that they may have put on it that might prevent the primer from bonding with the plastic. After that, you want to get rid of all those particles from sanding and any oils that have built up over time using a microfiber cloth. Make sure it's nice and clean so that the primer can bond with the plastic. Now for this case, I just used a standard white primer, spray paint from Krylon. If you're using gold paint, then you're probably going to want to use red gloss primer. That apparently makes it show up a lot better. I just worked with what I had. I wanted the gold to look very lustrous, but I also didn't want to cake it on so thick that the paint would start peeling after time, so I just put on some nice thin layers. Now, I can't draw very well, but I was lucky and recruited Terrocai, one of my favorite artists of all time, to come in and help with this. We did a test run on an old USB controller that I had, and I loved the test controller so much that I insisted she work with this one, even though it's a much lighter project. A couple of things we discovered during the test. You want to make sure you give the clear coat that you use a full 24 hours before actually touching it or handling it in any way. We haven't done a clear coat at this point, we've just used the gold paint. She's using an acrylic marker to paint over it. We only had one thickness of marker, so we weren't able to do the detail of the circuits we really wanted to do from the mock-up image. But it came out looking so good, I really don't care. Couldn't find a good viewing angle, so I just tried to get different shots of her drawing the image. I'm sure it wasn't annoying at all. Once she gave it her thumbs up of approval, it was time to move on to the little parts that I can handle. Now, I'm not a great artist, but I can definitely draw a couple of triangles. First, I wanted to get this off and put some new tape on to accommodate the triangle positioning. Now this is the satisfying part. Up until this point, I wasn't sure how the gold paint was going to contrast with the dark gray, but it came out looking just beautiful. Applying the Triforce was easy. I just used the same acrylic marker and some stenciling to make the triangle layout. If you're doing this, I recommend you put tape down, and even on top of that put down some construction paper so that you can hold it down and prevent any leakage, because some of these acrylic markers, although they are great, they drip a lot of extra paint which can bleed through. I did have a little bit of bleed through, and I tried to touch it up with the Sharpie marker here, which actually kind of came out nice because it added a sheen border to the Triforce. I'm going to be careful taking the tape off because remember, we haven't put down a clear coat yet, so this is just raw paint. But as you can see, it came out brilliantly. Now, when we did the mock-up, I honestly didn't think that we would be able to get this close to what I wanted to accomplish, but this is extremely impressive. Now for the final part. So I didn't have the recommended clear coat, but I found that this furniture lacquer works very well for this. It's designed to be handled, people coming into contact with it regularly on furniture, and did work well for my needs. But I linked the appropriate clear coat in the description below. The clear coat came out perfect, added a nice shine to it, and sealed in all the paint. I was a little bit worried that there would be some buildup of gunk around the well of the start button, and that might make it a little gunky and prevent it from pressing properly. But when I tested it, it was perfectly fine. If you do find that you've got some buildup when you're doing a similar customization, just roll up some sandpaper and stick it in there and graze the edges of it until you finally smooth off the bits that are preventing the button from moving properly. In my case, I didn't need to because I did a real even layer of the clear coat, so it's smooth. Always make sure you put the little cord protector back in the appropriate place. These little grooves that are in here are designed to prevent you from ripping it out of the soldering points if you get too excited or if it gets knocked off of a table or something. It's one of the many things I love about Nintendo's design. Their simplistic resolution to potential problems. It's the whole NASA spent millions of dollars to design a pen while the Russians just used a pencil. That's a myth. That's not an actual fact, by the way, but the parable consideration of it is true. Sometimes the simplest answer is the best one. And there we have it. I'm really happy the way this came out, and now it's time to test it and see if it still works. My handy dandy CRT TV here. Nice. Always worried about a cartridge not booting up. Well, I'm going to go play the game. I'm really glad you guys watched, and if you didn't know, now you know.